Ask Dan Schneider. On this Ask Dan Schneider, I'm going to answer a question from several years ago, and I guess maybe I premonitored uh, the idea that I would do a series like this because I had saved some of the odder questions with no real use for them until I came up with the idea to do this Ask Dan Schneider series. And I was asked by someone about 3 years ago, what do I regret the most about Cosmoetica? Is it dealing or writing about certain people? And I don't really regret anything. I mean, there was some things where I had been threatened with lawsuits by people who I had told the truth about, but they had threatened to sue me because in this culture, we don't live in a society that wants truth. We just want people to live their lives. Political correctness is based upon all of that. But a few years ago, when I was having some prostate issues, I wrote a piece about my prostate problems, and I, at the time, had gotten an apology from a blogger named Dean Esmay, who's actually going to appear on a Dan Schneider video interview about blogging in a few months. Blogging versus podcasting, why blogging failed, personal bloggers failed, and personal podcasters seem to have succeeded. Now, a lot of people, and I was someone who was very hit and miss on Esmay originally too, because he was someone who I thought had some good ideas. I thought he was a good, solid op-ed writer. I don't think he could write well in fiction. He published a sci-fi book. But other than that, his blog, even when I disagreed with it, I thought was a good outlet. But we had a falling out. He accused me of doing, I guess you'd call trolling his site or something, when I pointed out that in the Vietnam War, it was the U.S. and the South Vietnamese that started the first death camps via the CIA, which was later admitted. Esmay didn't swallow that, and so he had banned me. About a month later, I got some virus on my computer that someone had said come from Michigan, where Esmay resided, and I thought for a better part, or maybe even over a decade, that Esmay, who was a computer whiz, had sent me the virus. But anyway, out of the blue, he sent me an apology because I had mentioned him in a few essays about trolling and the kind of shit that I've gotten. Because he was sincere in his apology and denied ever sending me the virus, I thought of sending to his website, which had used to be a blog called Dean's World, but he now, for the last few years, has worked for a men's rights organization. And so I sent my essay about for men. Now, a lot of feminist types and a lot of liberal types don't like the men's rights advocates. I'm not big on them either, but I was not doing it for men's rights advocation, but as a good turn to Esmay for being a decent enough person to apologize for what he'd done a decade or so in the past. Well, of course, I got a lot of flack. I got some people saying, "Do you know who this guy is?" I got people, sending me a lot of emails, saying, "Why would I want to ally myself with Dean Esmay?" Well, of course, I didn't ally myself with Dean Esmay in any other way than to give him and his website an article on men's health. That doesn't mean that I support his political views or philosophic views or religious views or views on any other thing. But people think in such dualistic terms that you have to be either for or against. I probably am, I would say, 75 to 80% sharing of views with Esmay, who has always called himself a liberal, even when, for example, he supported the Iraq War, or he has, supported people that are critical of the AIDS, HIV connection, and other what most people would consider wacky beliefs. But just because I gave an essay does not mean that I share his views nor endorse his views. Because he's going to come on and talk about blogging versus podcasting, again, does not mean I share nor endorse his views. But one has to be mature enough to deal with people as adults and say, they have this opinion, I have this opinion, we agree to disagree, but we can talk about other things. Because most of modern culture doesn't do that, you get people who are bigots on the left and the right. You get the Jerry Falwells who are now dead. You get the Bill Maher's on the left. You get right-wing broadcasters like Rush Limbaugh. You get, some of the silly stuff on shows like The View. And that's one of the reasons that Cosmoetica exists. That's one of the reasons that the Cosmoetica YouTubes and my Dan Schneider video interviews and all of my essays and all of my writings exist, is to try to get people to think for themselves uniquely. I'll never agree with Dean Esmay about the Vietnam War, probably, or the Iraq War, or a number of other issues. I will probably always be in sync with him on other issues. That's just the way it is. Anyway, that's a long answer to a rather pointed question, but this was the best example I could think of in this Ask Dan Schneider segment. So thanks for the question.